Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're here for the second match today for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokémon VGC, sponsored by Elgato. My name is Ben Kiriakou, joined here by Gabby Snyder, and we've seen some interesting Pokémon already right off the bat. Elimination Sunday for the final week of the group stages in this tournament, and well, we've seen already some trainers wanting to go out with a bang.
I feel like room service Torkoal is like a statement, and I
Yeah.
respect it. As a longtime Torkoal player over Sword and Shield, I 120% respect it. We have a similar situation with this upcoming match, in the sense that we will be featuring China versus Poland, and China has already qualified, which means they'll be facing Netherlands in the top 16, so in the playoff week. Whereas Poland, unfortunately, has already been eliminated. And if we want to take a look at their scoreboard for this week to see all the matches between China and Poland, you can sort of see that China's been really having a great week, all things considered.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that you can really say to the country there. Only Diana being able to take a game off China and 2-0s across the board. So really well played by them, I'm sure. And a sad story really for Poland to not be able to take a few wins, off of a team that's been doing really well, but it's still great to have them here. And I'm looking forward to the match that we've got today between Yuxiang and Bartosz. Bartosz is a player that's been around the European circuit. I've had the pleasure of playing both against and alongside for quite a number of years now. And he always brings something a little bit quite solid, but with his own take on each of the Pokemon there. So looking forward to seeing what he's going to be bringing along today.
Yeah, so we've already seen their teams on the interstitial between rounds, but let's go ahead and take a look at the teams of these players. Bartosz will be the first person we're going to take a look at, and I gotta say, I respect the Primal Groudon in there. I thought that it was a Groudon on the screen. That may have been a mistake. It looks like it's a Zacian now. All Pokemon are dogs, so it's understandable that sometimes you just think they're a different dog, right? Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll go for it. I'll go for it. Yeah, that's actually it does make a lot more sense in this
Yeah.
composition, especially with that Pelipper, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Amoonguss. So double water, double grass. Double water, double grass. Only one fire though, so Zacian letting the side down here, I think, slightly with that double fire water grass core coming out here. But Bartosz having some accolades to his name, of course. 2019, a few top eight performances, a couple of top eight performances in Frankfurt and Cannes, should I say. 2018 top eight Tours special event, that's in France, and top eight Bremen regional as well in 2017. So, coming back every year and making his mark in the regional circuit. And that's definitely not something to be shy of going into this sort of match.
Oh, without a doubt. On the other side of the field, Wang Shinchan, I believe, or Yushan, excuse me, it has a interesting team of its own. You know, we have this sort of standard Incineroar, Rillaboom, Regieleki, Pseudocore, and then you have a Landorus Therian, a Gothitelle, and an Eternatus rounding out the team. So it's really curious to me to see the Gothitelle and the Eternatus side by side, but that's something that's been picking up a lot in popularity, and it's because it works.
Definitely, and you've got that trapping ability with Gothitelle. That's so powerful and quite difficult to use equally. It's one of those things that you get into the right position, you get Gothitelle next to something that can knock out both Pokemon on your opposing side of the team, and you just they just can't react to you in the same way as usually you'd be able to switch around and pivot and do more things. And this team really wants to be taking advantage of that. I quite like the application with Eternatus though, because it does have quite a lot of coverage. It's quite fast. It's really powerful, and so it hits kind of all of the marks that you need to work with Gothitelle, in that you can maybe hit first, maybe you can, but sorry, more likely than not, you can hit first, and more than likely that you can take at least one knockout out of the two Pokemon that you're up against.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get this game started. As we get team preview, and we can confirm it is a Zacian. All Pokemon are dogs. We're just happen to watch the goodest boy today. And some really interesting item choices here, since we will be watching this game from Bartosz's perspective. We can see that, there is the Choice Scarf on the Urshifu, Rocky Helmet, though, on Amoonguss, which, Ben, I feel like we've been around long enough to think, oh yeah, that's a pretty standard item to have.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's actually been a presence in the metagame probably for at least 3 or 4 years.
No, definitely not. It makes sense now with the prevalence of Urshifu Rapid Strike. I kind of feel like we should have seen it earlier because,
Yeah.
back in the day it was used for something like Mega Kangaskhan, and now it's going to be more useful against something that hits 3 times instead of 2. So you kind of get more value out of the Rocky Helmet, certainly, and especially since Amoonguss actually resists that hit rather than having to take a lot of damage for its troubles. But you see these sort of interactions between these sort of Pokemon not really coming out in this matchup. The Rocky Helmet not doing too much, maybe taking the odd fake out from the Incineroar, a little bit more damage from the Flare Blitz. But really, it's going to be a case of how Bartosz can interact with that Eternatus and really threaten it early doors.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and get this game started. So once again, this is China versus Poland. China has already made it. Poland is going out with a bang, as we like to say. And this game is getting started with Eternatus and Regieleki as the lead, followed by Rillaboom and Amoonguss on Bartosz's side of the field. And, if it wasn't for the presence of that Eternatus, I would say this is a great lead, since these two Pokemon can threaten Regieleki quite a lot.
They definitely can, but they're gonna have to get at Regieleki before Regieleki just goes on out of there, whether that's by a Volt Switch or switching out itself. And in the meantime, Eternatus has got quite a nice position in this board state, with neither Amoonguss nor Rillaboom being able to pressure it offensively. There's always that trouble that you have when you're facing down an Amoonguss, where you have to decide on whether the Spore is coming out into one slot or the other, especially when you can't knock it out straight away. So that's something that Yuxiang's going to have to deal with, and we'll see how they adjust this turn.
Incineroar making an appearance, usually the Pokemon to hold safety goggles if it's going to be anywhere on the team, so could have been a great adaptation if we saw the Spore go into that spot. Eternatus also taking things slow, starting off with a Protect. U-turn from that Rillaboom will connect with the Incineroar and give Bartosz a nice opportunity to adjust. Knowing that the Regieleki is no longer there could open up a possibility for a Pokemon like Pelipper to make an appearance. Would have been really nice to see maybe the I don't know, the Urshifu in the back of Bartosz's party, but unfortunately Pelipper's the water type of choice today.
Yeah, and when you've got so many options, it's a little bit of a coin flip as to which one you end up with. But Pelipper coming in here, I think, would be quite a nice position for Bartosz. I mean, you've got that Incineroar just landed on the field. If it doesn't have access to Taunt, then you can bring it in. Then Pelipper's Rain protects the Amoonguss from Flare Blitz coming out from the Incineroar, as well as maybe Flamethrower coming out from the Eternatus. So, there's a little bit of a toss-up there, but it looks like Zacian is the choice for Bartosz. Bring it in and wanting to start putting pressure probably on that Eternatus slot.
Yeah, it's possible that Bartosz also just switches the Amoonguss out this turn for the Pelipper if he's concerned about that Zacian taking a Flare Blitz right off the bat. But Zacian is probably the best Pokemon to threaten that Eternatus that Bartosz has access to in this game. And given how limiting it's been at the start, I almost feel like you take this opportunity when you can. It can't protect because it just did. If Yuxiang goes for a switch, then it's possible that you'll also get a KO there too. And then you also get the Pelipper on the field for later, once it can attack.
Yeah, and this is the sort of little toss-up here because we've also had the Incineroar come in and has access to the fake out. So Amoonguss though is going to switch out, going to bring in that Pelipper, just like you mentioned, Gabby. Going to be setting up the rain with its Drizzle ability there and stopping damage from any fire type moves. A fake out going to be breaking that focus sash on the Pelipper though, so going to be probably important a bit later on in the game, but more important is that Behemoth Blade coming out into the Eternatus doing a really nice chunk of damage, and Flamethrower coming out from that Eternatus is going to land into the Pelipper, so really nice turn there for Bartosz, just mitigating all of that damage from his opponent's side of the field while being able to put on lots of pressure to Yuxiang's Eternatus.
Yeah, and there's nothing really stopping him from going for a second Behemoth Blade this turn. Pelipper is certainly more of a toss-up, but I think that Yuxiang will really struggle to connect an attack with the Zacian this turn, and as a result, I think you let the Eternatus just unfortunately get knocked out, and then you send something in once there is that opening.
Potentially, and you got to wonder if you're Yuxiang whether you've got the Landorus sitting in the back, because there'd be a nice switch in right about now, especially in the Eternatus slot, to take a Behemoth Blade that's launching out from this Zacian. So Eternatus does go down this turn, definitely not going to be able to survive this, and Pelipper's going to be free to attack next. And we did see a little bit of a sneak peek at that being the Hydro Pump, which does land into the Incineroar, takes it down, and we'll see if it's enough to pick up. Yes, it is the KO on that Incineroar. So that's 2 KOs there for Bartosz, and Yuxiang's going to have to bring in their final 2 Pokemon.
So Regieleki and this mystery 4th Pokemon, you were just speculating that it's the Landorus. It's actually going to be Rillaboom. So good information for Bartosz in this game 1. Yuxiang can certainly go for a Thunderbolt or any electric type attack to pick up the KO on that. Pelipper may still have access to speed control in the form of Electro Web, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's necessarily enough damage potential for him to take out Zacian, who did such a good job with those Behemoth Blades into that Eternatus in those past 2 turns.
Definitely, and one of the things about Pelipper, while it's not so great at taking certainly electric attacks, but generally more special based attacks, it has got quite a high defensive stat. So could be taking grassy glides and launching out hurricanes of its own. And Bartosz wanting to go for a protect here, just not wanting to take any risk of fake out Thunderbolt. And Pelipper gets knocked out by the Thunderbolt from the Regieleki there. So we'll see what this Rillaboom was going for. Just a U-turn, so maybe trying to predict a switch in potentially for that Amoonguss, maybe just get a little bit more damage than launching out a grass type attack into the Zacian that turn. But equally, we've got 2 grass type Pokemon in that Rillaboom and Amoonguss in Bartosz, and he's going to really be able to just play exactly how he wishes once this Amoonguss hits the field, and it can redirect those attacks from Regieleki.
Exactly. The Zacian would still have to take an attack from that Rillaboom, but I totally agree. I think U-turn is really its best attacking move, as Grassy Glide will be very resisted. So Zacian, free to target either of these 2 Pokemon. I think just to be safe, you go for the Regieleki first. You don't want to take any more Thunderbolts than you necessarily have to take at this point in time. And then you start focusing in on that Rillaboom to clean the game up.
Potentially, but when you've got 2 grass type Pokemon in the back, it may be prudent to just go for that Rillaboom. It's a little bit of a toss up. We're talking about the 2 ways that you realistically just win this match regardless. With the position that Bartosz is in, and we'll have to see what Bartosz decides that he wants to go for. Starting off with that Rage Powder from the Amoonguss, going to be redirecting the Thunderbolt from the Regieleki into it. We'll see it takes that like a champ, and definitely going to be able to take many more in its stead. A Behemoth Blade coming out from the Zacian is going to launch into the Rillaboom, and it's not going to be enough to pick up the KO. Does look like that Rillaboom has just enough health to take any Rocky Helmet chip as well, but just a Wood Hammer into the Zacian does quite a lot of damage actually, and if that Regieleki was going for something like an Electro Web, there could be maybe a light at the end of the tunnel for Yuxiang here.
Yeah, Woodhammer, it's not present on a lot of Rillabooms, but it certainly is, I think it's actually the most powerful grouse type attack it gets access to. So you can really see the difference in damage there, especially if that Rillaboom was also holding something like Miracle Seed to boost its attacks. I like that play from Yuxiang. Like, I think he's doing his best to, remain in a positive position to win. Going for that Thunderbolt, unfortunately, it probably was redirected. But if you, like you said, if he can have a Electro Web, maybe something to reveal in a future game as he does lock in the forfeit, you can get some chip damage down onto that Zacian a little bit earlier so that when the Woodhammer does connect, it still is enough to just wrap that knockout up.
Yeah, exactly. And the real theme of that game, I think, was the fact that Bartosz just had those two grass type Pokemon and Zacian, which were weak to the Flamethrower and Flare Blitz from Yuxiang's team, but had that Pelipper to support it and make those damage, reduce the amount of damage that they were taking so much that it just wasn't really possible for Yuxiang to break that sort of defensive core. Something I really like in these sort of compositions where the defensive capability comes from the passive effect as much as anything else, in the same way that we intimidate, but the difference being is that you can chuck Raid on the field and it lasts for a few turns, so that was really good to see. And I think there's got to be some adjustment here from Yuxiang to break through that core.
Yeah, so let's get game 2 started. And I totally agree with the fact of how useful Pelipper was in this matchup. And I think that going into game 2, Yuxiang has to realize that you basically will expect to see the Pelipper at some point, I think, just because of how valuable it is. But because you don't necessarily know when, you really have to keep that Regieleki safe. So I think the adaptation we see from him is to, maybe still lead the Eternatus and just hope you can maybe have a Gothitelle handy or something to trap Pokemon on the field, especially if the lead is more advantageous for Eternatus like we saw originally prior to Bartosz pivoting.
Exactly, and I think that Gothitelle is really the key to reducing all of Bartosz's options. Obviously, Rillaboom is a Pokemon that we know has U-turn, so can pivot out, but you can only do that once unless you're able to dispatch the Gothitelle at the same time. It's definitely possible with a super effective attack, but that's hard to do when you're in front of a Pokemon putting on such pressure like that Eternatus. And especially where we saw the Thunderbolt go into the Flamethrower, should I say, going into the Amoonguss on that turn. You'd like to think that if the Gothitelle was on the field, maybe it offers something like a helping hand to boost damage, and that Amoonguss would have gone down much quicker. And in that position, you probably be able to use the Regieleki a little bit more freely.
Exactly, and Gothitelle it is. Unfortunately, finding that Pelipper right off the bat, it looks like we found the perfect thing to talk about as a segue, so I'm going to pat ourselves on the back for that one, Ben. But also, Eternatus and Rillaboom making an appearance on the field once again.
Yeah, and Gothitelle, having access to Fake Out as does the Rillaboom, kind of changes the dynamic of this turn, especially when you can, where you're Yuxiang, you can really knock out or try to knock out the Rillaboom on Bartosz's side of the field pretty quickly. You don't care too much about the two attacking options that Pelipper has. I mean, that Hydro Pump is going to be powerful, but it also could miss. So you've got to toss up the damage potential there, but Eternatus doesn't mind that at all, nor does it really mind the Hurricane either. So against a Pokemon like Rillaboom that doesn't often carry Protect, you can really get a good handle on the early game here.
Definitely, and an early handle it is, as Fake Out goes for the flinch on the Rillaboom. Sludge Bomb from Eternatus brings the Pelipper down to its Focus Sash, and Rillaboom unable to attack, but given how it was faster than the Eternatus, did go for a priority move. Hurricane will connect with the Eternatus from Pelipper to wrap up the turn. No confusion though, so very strong start for Yuxiang, and very... sorry, I cannot speak today. Yuxiang, and a very, very offensive comeback from what we saw in that game 1.
Yeah, what I want to know here is whether that Gothitelle has access to Helping Hand, really. I mean, that's the only way that this Life Orb Eternatus is going to be able to deal the damage it needs to knock out the Assault Vested Rillaboom here. That's going to make a big difference, because if you can knock that out, especially where we've seen Bartosz lock himself into Protect on that Pelipper, and there it is, there it comes.
There it is.
Rillaboom going to be taking a big attack this turn, I think.
Definitely. Pelipper does go for the Protect, but Sludge Bomb not going anywhere near it. Helping Hand enough to turn that into a KO. There's a critical hit on top of all that, but I think even an Assault Vest Rillaboom cannot take a Helping Hand Sludge Bomb from Eternatus, just thanks to that special attack and its fantastic typing.
Yeah, indeed. And now, you've got this position where Bartosz has a Pokemon to bring in. It's going to be that Zacian for Bartosz. That's going to find itself in a pretty good position because that rain is up and stays on the field. Of course, Gothitelle has got some options that we see occasionally. I'm looking out for the blind hypnosis right now from that Gothitelle onto the Zacian. That could be a really crucial play here, because based on the damage that we saw last turn, that Eternatus is going to be knocked out by a Behemoth Blade. And there's not really a lot that Yuxiang can do in this position other than, switch about and keep the Gothitelle alive, and maybe wants to play a little bit defensively on that front. If the Landorus or Incineroar are in the back, they could be good switch outs, but you've got to think that Pelipper is going to be potentially attacking them on the switch in.
Well, it is the Landorus Therian switching in for Gothitelle. Intimidate will lower Zacian's attack, negating the Intrepid Sword boost. But there are more swords where that one was found, as Zacian's able to do a dance with them to boost its attack by 2 stages. Sludge Bomb from Eternatus will connect with that Pelipper for the KO, and we were unable to see it go for that Hydro Pump, which was going to go for that Landorus Therian. So, a good thing that the Eternatus was faster.
Definitely was, and we saw that the Sludge Bomb going into the Pelipper couldn't protect again, couldn't switch out, so nice targeting there from Yuxiang, and Bartosz also taking great advantage of the rain condition on the field and saying, like, okay, Intimidate's likely to come in here, so I'm just going to nullify that straight away. And we can see here he doesn't have access to close combat, so that Incineroar, if it's in the back like it was in game 1 for Yuxiang, as well as this Landorus, can sort of try and pivot around a little bit, but they've all got to be a little bit scared of this Amoonguss as well, and certainly with redirection on the field, I can see in the next few turns this Zacian at 2 stages of increased attack, in fact, is going to be punching some holes in things.
Yeah, normally when you're in this position, Yuxiang would want to switch his Pokemon around, but no switching is happening. Instead, Play Rough able to connect with the Landorus Therian for the knockout. Draco Meteor from the Eternatus into that Amoonguss. Doing a lot of damage on its own, getting the 2-stage special attack drop after that, also taking some Life Orb damage. But, given the fact that Amoonguss has access to Spore and does put the Eternatus to sleep, this is how Bartosz would have stopped Yuxiang's sort of only way out from here. You just rotate with the Landorus in and out of the field so you can stack up those Intimidates onto the Zacian. But, you already have the Sword Stance up. That sort of negates the first couple of Intimidates for that Zacian. And you also have Spore on Amoonguss. So, really, I think Bartosz is in a fantastic position where he can protect the Zacian this turn, go for a Spore on the Regieleki, and just keep sort of, limiting the opportunities that Yuxiang has to attack for the rest of this game.
Yeah, the reveal of the Regieleki being the last Pokemon for Yuxiang doesn't bode as well as it could. I mean, we didn't see the Electro Web in the previous game, but that could be one of the moves that Yuxiang decides to lock in here, especially with that Moongus being on such low health. If it is carrying that Focus Sash, though, you could potentially go for maybe a Thunderbolt into the Amoonguss to try and guarantee the knockout. Amoonguss Pokemon that doesn't always carry Protect either, so it could be definitely a route there. And in the meantime, you're trying to maybe get that Eternatus a little bit less pressured so you can have it wake up later.
Volt Switch, the move of choice, onto Zacian, doing a nice chunk of damage, giving the Regieleki the opportunity to switch out, as we also saw the Amoonguss go for Protect, which, come to think of it, was revealed in Game 1. So possibly a good prediction here from Yuxiang. The Zacian going for Behemoth Blade into the Gothitelle, going to bring it down to a Focus Sash. So really big damage there, and Eternatus staying asleep for the turn, because that was the turn it was guaranteed to be asleep for. That's it.
Indeed. And Gothitelle coming in here, Shadow Tag's not doing anything anymore, as there's no Pokemon that Bartosz can switch into, but it does offer Fake Out. And now that Eternatus has taken some sleep turns, could be waking up here. The Amoonguss just protecting does mean that the Gothitelle could go for a Fake Out into the Zacian, and potentially then the Eternatus could knock out the Amoonguss this turn. You got to bank on a little bit of good fortune for that to all come off, and if it doesn't, it's likely that the Gothitelle could maybe go to sleep this turn, or just get knocked out from the Zacian's Behemoth Blade. So difficult position here for Yuxiang. Could be a little bit of a way out, but definitely needs some things going in their favor.
Yeah, Zacian protecting could potentially be one of them if Yuxiang was able to predict that Fake Out going into the Zacian from the Gothitelle, but that Eternatus able to wake up and secure the knockout onto Amoonguss with Sludge Bomb. So that was the perfect time there, and I think by waking up, the Eternatus has given Yuxiang a win position. It's not going to be great. It's going to be a bit of a roll, but I think you try and go for Helping Hand and Flamethrower. If there's no more rain on the field, that might be enough.
I think it's definitely enough, Gabby. I mean, with the Life Orb boost, it's a really powerful move in its own right. But if I recall correctly, the Zacian did outspeed the Eternatus. So now it's a case of a little bit of a toss-up. Which shenanigans are coming out from the Gothitelle? Is it Ally Switch? Is it Hypnosis? Is it maybe Protect in a Trick Room? There's a few ways around this turn, but Bartosz has to worry about what the offensive threat coming out from that Eternatus is doing while he tries to deal with the Gothitelle as well.
Well, he guessed correctly, as Eternatus protects while Zacian free to target that Gothitelle for the KO. So Eternatus now does not have access to Helping Hand. Still could come down to Flamethrower connecting if given the opportunity, as there's still Regieleki as well. I completely forgot. So that does change things up a little bit, as Regieleki, given that Zacian can only target one of these Pokemon, should be able to connect the two Thunderbolts I'd assume it'd need to pick up that knockout.
Yeah, and now it's a case of, you don't even have to worry about the Electro Web and going for that could potentially miss. You're absolutely right, Gabby. Going for the two Thunderbolts would be the consistent way to win this game. And Yuxiang clicking that Thunderbolt definitely is enough to pick up the 2-hit KO on that Zacian. It doesn't carry the Focus Sash because we've already seen that from the Gothitelle. And the Behemoth Blade is going into Eternatus, is easily enough to pick up the knockout here with a critical hit. Not sure that mattered whatsoever. But Eternatus going back to Yuxiang, and now it's Regieleki versus Zacian, and Zacian does not like its position at all.
No, Regieleki is just too fast and has too much health, I think, for this situation. Like you said, there is no focus sash on that Regieleki. We have the benefit of having seen it revealed from Gothitelle already, but I think that Zacian really just struggles to get any damage to connect with Regieleki at this point anyways. So very well played by Yuxiang. It looks like we're going to be getting a game 3 from this, and I'm very excited to see how that'll play out because it really has been neck and neck this entire game. As Thunderbolt secures the deal, we are getting that game 3. Let's go.
Definitely, definitely. And now when you go back to looking back at this game, in complete contrast to the first game, Yushang really had the board control all of the way through that match. And there was a little bit of where it got a little bit dicey in the middle, where there was some spores going off, but Eternatus managing to wake itself up just at the right time must have set its alarm this game, because it just did exactly what it needed to when it needed to. And a little bit of targeting there from Bartosz may have been able to pull out the win there, but equally, it's a really hard position to be in front of something like a Gothitelle, and that's what Bartosz needs to go back to the drawing board and figure out, where that Rillaboom and the Pelipper, while good on paper, given the ability to pivot, a Rillaboom really doesn't like facing down into Eternatus, and we saw that Gothitelle had the faster fake out available to it, so really could just pressure it right off the bat.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing for Bartosz as we start game 3 is that he is in this position where he has to play this team preview as if whatever two Pokemon he leads are the two Pokemon that are going to be locked in the front. Presumably against Eternatus, given how Yuxiang has led for the past couple of games, but could also decide to mix things up entirely and start off with the Regieleki outright, since that was also a Pokemon that did a lot of damage for him. And if I were in Bartosz's shoes, it would be very tempting to lock into a Pokemon like the Incineroar, for example, maybe even the Incineroar and the Zacian, just to try and match that offense outright. Incineroar is probably the best Pokemon on Bartosz's team to take down that Gothitelle, other than the Zacian, and it's curious that it hasn't made an appearance yet in the set.
I think I agree. And one of the things that you can glean from the games that we've seen so far, because that Eternatus is carrying the Life Orb, that means it's not carrying the Power Herb. So that Incineroar is going to be much less threatened by Eternatus than other Pokemon. We saw how much damage the Draco Meteor did to the Amoonguss. It could be that the Amoonguss is trained to be a little bit more physically defensive than specially defensive, but that Incineroar would take a bit of damage, but it's going to take less damage than, say, the Rillaboom would from a super effective Sludge Bomb, especially boosted by the Helping Hand. So with those sort of pivot options available, especially with something like Parting Shot maybe, that you can use to weaken the Eternatus down, you may be able to create yourself quite a bit of space there with the Zacian to do what Zacian does best.
Definitely. So let's get this game 3 started. Again, this is Poland versus China, and even though the matches have already been decided in a certain extent, this game will certainly mean a lot to both these trainers if it's won. So we're seeing the same lead from Yuxiang's side of the field with that Gothitelle and the Eternatus. And on Bartosz's side, I have to chuckle a little bit because it's Pelipper and it's Amoonguss. I think two Pokemon we both weren't expecting to see so early on in this game 1.
Not at all, and you can see there the double protect being locked in just burn the fake out here. One of the things I think is going to be really interesting in this particular position is that Gothitelle usually doesn't carry an attack, or at least more often than not, and so if it doesn't have access to one of its psychic moves, whether that's expanding force or just plain old psychic, it won't be able to target down the Amoonguss with any damage dealing moves, but what it might be able to do is taunt it as well.
So Regieleki taking the field for that Eternatus as the double protect is happening for both the Amoonguss and the Pelipper. Gothitelle goes for the fake out and connects with the Amoonguss.
Yeah, it does. I think that's a reasonable fake out choice there. the Amoonguss, I don't believe, has been hit by any physical moves yet, or at least contact-inducing moves, and so Yuxiang doesn't know yet that the fake out would have broken the focus sash. It's probably definitely in Yuxiang's favor that protect went off for Bartosz than anything else. The Regieleki coming onto the field, though, if I'm wrong about that Gothitelle and it does carry a damage-dealing move, could be enough to knock out the Pelipper this turn, and maybe we see some of the starts of some shenanigans with Electro Web, but no, just a Volt Switch going into that Pelipper, breaking that focus, bring it down to that Focus Sash.
Yeah, not so much breaking as forcing the Pelipper to rely on it, as Yuxiang has the perfect opportunity to get that Eternatus back out onto the field to threaten that Amoonguss if the Gothitelle is capable of picking up that KO. The Eternatus is the Pokemon that's sent in, so we'll just have to wait a moment to see what Gothitelle goes for. It does have access to Taunt, and it does connect with the Amoonguss. Pelipper's Hydro Pump missing the Gothitelle, and poor Amoonguss just unable to go for Spores until it expires.
Nah, yeah, and that's a bit unfortunate for Yuxiang because that damage on the Gothitelle would have been crucial. One of the things that Gothitelle, when you're playing against Gothitelle, is, you have to take every opportunity to knock it down or to do a little bit of chip damage, especially when it's carrying Focus Sash, because if you don't, then it just stays on the field and stops you from positioning whatsoever. And now that Amoonguss is probably not feeling too great, just sitting there without being able to do all of the things that it loves to do so much. And Yuxiang's going to take advantage of that with Helping Hand damage onto anything that it wants to go for.
Yeah, Sludge Bomb, Helping Hand. I think that Yuxiang was probably hoping the Pelipper would have switched out there, but could also be an interesting indication of what is or isn't known by this Gothitelle. Pelipper is knocked out as Amoonguss goes for a Sludge Bomb of its own. Zacian taking the place in Pelipper's loss.
Indeed, and now we've got to wonder if this Zacian has enough to be able to deal with both the Regieleki in the back as well as this Eternatus, because based on the damage from previous games, the Eternatus won't be going down from a Behemoth Blade from this range. And so, even in the rain, a Helping Hand Flamethrower is going to be doing a fair chunk of damage, and you can launch that out pretty much for free into the Zacian with the Amoonguss being taunted. The Gothitelle goes down at this point. Not so much of a problem, it's kind of done its job in the fact that it's restricted Bartosz's switching options already. And of course, we could see the Helping Hand Draco Meteor go into that Amoonguss, especially since it can't protect, to lock out Bartosz from being able to switch whatsoever.
Well, another adaptation revealed from Yuxiang in the form of that Incineroar. Helping Hand Flame or Flare Blitz certainly will do a ton of damage to both these Pokemon as well. As Zacian locked on the field, Behemoth Blade into Incineroar just doesn't do any damage, also thanks to that Intimidate. Thunder Wave from Gothitelle is its status move of choice. No Hypnosis. As Zacian is paralyzed, Amoonguss forced to go for a Sludge Bomb into that Incineroar and does get the opportunity to shake off that taunt, but you have to know it's probably going to get taunted once again.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear at this point. The fake out can come into Zacian, no problem. That is if the Zacian's even able to maybe protect itself or do anything else this turn, and Taunt will be absolutely free into the Amoonguss this turn. Amoonguss can go for a Protect here, just make sure that the Zacian has an opportunity to maybe hit the Gothitelle first, but depending on how the Gothitelle and the Zacian are trained, likely that the Gothitelle is going to be able to go before the Zacian now that the Thunder Wave is on the field, and Thunder Wave halving the speed stat of the Zacian. So now that Pelipper's already gone from the field, I think it's going to be a little bit of a waiting game going on with that Eternatus in the back and firing off big attacks coming out later in the game.
Taunt into the protecting Amoonguss as a second Behemoth Blade from the Zacian finds its mark against the Gothitelle this time, but just barely misses the KO. Flare Blitz from the Incineroar into the rain, into the protecting Amoonguss as the rain finally stops. So I think this is the opportunity you're looking for. Maybe keep targeting that Amoonguss just so you don't have to worry about Spore. Eventually, you also don't have to worry about Zacian getting a Protect off this turn. But it looks like this Incineroar is ready to start dealing that damage.
It definitely is, and something that we know that Yuxiang doesn't is that there isn't the option for the. In fact, actually, we have seen all of Zacian's moves already, so Yuxiang will know that the play rough is the only option of choice in it. At neutral, it possibly could take down this Incineroar from this range, but it's not guaranteed, and certainly you've got to ignore the Gothitelle to do that. So maybe a little bit of a turn where you try to damage the Incineroar as much as possible and use Sludge Bomb to pick up the knockout on that Gothitelle.
Unfortunately, Amoonguss goes for the second Protect and misses it. Gothitelle connecting a taunt with the Amoonguss, and Sword Stance the move of choice for Zacian. Flare Blitz able to knock it out. Super effective, critical hit. Unfortunately for Bartosz, I don't think there was too much he could have done to stop that from knocking out if it was destined to crit. The Sword Stance certainly would have been a great play for a longer term, as that would have turned a play rough into a guaranteed knockout for that Incineroar, but unfortunately just left itself wide open to take that attack.
Yeah, you kind of be thinking, well, if Bartosz was going for the Sword Stance, maybe the Rage Powder would have been a bit more of a consistent play. You could have just got the Sword Stance up for free. Maybe Bartosz trying to take advantage of the previous targeting where the Flare Blitz would have... Yuxiang would have targeted the Amoonguss specifically with the Flare Blitz just because it had already protected. And so trying to maybe get a double protect in, that would block the taunt, that would block a second Flare Blitz, and then you get a free Sword Stance, and then you're in a great position. So a little bit unfortunate for Bartosz there that Yuxiang kind of played it straight, so to speak, with just the taunt and the Flare Blitz. And if Rage Powder came out, the Amoonguss goes down, and if it doesn't, then you get at the very least, a lot of damage off onto the Zacian.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Bartosz, I think these two Pokemon are going to struggle, but Yuxiang playing it safe for starters, switching in the Regieleki Thunder Wave from that Gothitelle will be paralyzing the Rillaboom and forcing it to be inactive for the turn. Sludge Bomb from Amoonguss brings Regieleki down to below half its health thanks to a critical hit, and that might open a door for Bartosz, as it certainly is within knockout range from a Grassy Glide at this point.
Yeah, and free Pokemon, in fact, on Yuxiang's team are probably getting close to that point where Grassy Glide would be enough. It's certainly with a Sludge Bomb help from the Amoonguss and maybe a little bit from Rocky Helmet as well. That Gothitelle doesn't offer any offensive presence. Regieleki is now up against two Pokemon that it can't really hit for too much damage, and so I like the fact that Yuxiang is just bringing it onto the field and protecting the Pokemon that will actually do a little bit more or be a bit more positive in this position. But Eternatus is still fairly healthy, and two Grass-type Pokemon with only Grass, Bug, and Poison coverage are all moves that the Eternatus can resist, and so I think this is a bit of an uphill battle.
Yeah, and I think Yuxiang also realizing that Eternatus is basically the way to win this game the quickest. Switching it out onto the field, Thunderbolt into that Rillaboom does a little bit of damage. Knockoff from the Rillaboom into the Regieleki will pick up the KO and reveal the Choice Scarf. So some good information, you know, just to have in your notebook in case you're looking to build a Eternatus team of your own. Sludge Bomb, though, not dealing much damage. I gotta say, as much as I would have loved to see the Amoonguss and the Rillaboom make a last stand for Poland and for Bartosz in this game, I think that switching in the Eternatus is a really good way to sort of say, look, this is the Pokemon you have to be in order to get that win condition. I don't think you can do it. I'm just going to start using Flamethrower as soon as I can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the position that we're in now, where Eternatus and Gothitelle are on the field, and there's a grassy glide there that can come out from the Rillaboom to knock out that Gothitelle, no problem. But Gothitelle's going to be able to get off a helping hand first off. We saw the Amoonguss try to go for a protect there, I believe, and wasn't allowed to do so. So Bartosz locking in the forfeit there, and doesn't want to play this out, knows the result, and knows that he isn't able to get through that Eternity.
Yeah, and that was, I think, really well played. It was a bit unfortunate that Bartosz felt like he had to bring that Amoonguss and Rillaboom combination in that game three.
Mm,
I think
mm,
those Pokemon together gave his team a lot of flexibility. It's just when your opponent has already recognized, Eternatus is my win condition. This is how I win this game.
mm.
It just makes it so much of an uphill battle.
Yeah, definitely. Eternatus is one of those Pokemon that you bring into the format because it's usually really good against the supporting five. Some restricted Pokemon it's good against, some it's not so good against as all of the rest of them are. But the supporting five are really one of the keys to victory in these sort of formats, as well as being able to knock out the restricted. But if your supporting five can knock out Zacian, or at least stop Zacian from being such a problem, especially when you're running Eternatus, then Rillaboom, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Urshifu, all of these Pokemon that are really commonly brought to VGC and certainly appeared on Bartosz's teams, don't appreciate both the defensive capability and the offensive capability that Eternatus can dish out, and that's what Yuxiang has taken advantage of here.
Yeah, so very well played by Yushang and very well played for China, only dropping 2 games throughout the entirety of their sets this week. You know that they're going to be going into the playoffs just ready to go for that crown. So, best of luck. Thank you to Poland for the fantastic matches, and we'll be back with more games from the Victory Road World Cup sponsored by Elgato after this break. So, thank you all so much for watching.